In today's installment of In Retrospect, we're going to be looking at the album Blink Banshee Zero by artist Blink Banshee. The album was released on September 1st, 2012, and is the first release from the Canadian artist. Patrick Driscoll is the person behind the Blink Banshee mask, and has been performing and creating music since 2009, where he's a part of the group Shinjuku Mad, along with Curtis Ferguson. The group released 2 albums and played live shows for 2 more years before Driscoll moved on to create the Blink Banshee project. The album Blink Banshee Zero begins with the track B-Disc Startup. B-Disc Startup starts with a slowed down version of the Macintosh startup noise, along with accompanying drums. A more defined beat comes in with a trap-sounding hi-hat pattern. The song then boots up the Windows 95 startup sound before coming back to the original drum loop. The track ends with the Windows 95 startup sound again. Wavestep. This track begins with a sample of Zora's Domain from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Some vocals then come in along with a down-tempo drum beat. The track slowly becomes more and more distorted before reverting back to the sample. The drop of this track is in a 3/4 time signature with a constant drum pattern. The ethereal sounding sample mixes with the 3/4 time signature to create a feeling of floating. The drop cuts out and brings us into the breakdown, where the sample is now pitched down and the drum beat turns into a trap-esque beat. The drop comes back, but this time in a 4/4 time signature with a return of the vocals. The track ends with the same sample, but cut in a different way to give off a more foreboding tone. Bathsalts. This track starts us off with a trap-sounding lead synth that slowly becomes more reverberated. The track builds up like any minimal trap song would, and the lead becomes more and more distorted. This song sounds like a mess of various sounds fighting for our attention, which most likely fits with the song title of Bathsalts. Most likely a reference to the drug, this track feels like a fever dream of samples all trying to grab our attention, but leaving just as soon as they appear. Elements cut out and a down-pitched vocal chop is introduced. The track then builds up, then drops into a sped-up Moombahton section where the focus is on the drums, but slowly more elements come in. These elements are extremely distorted and begin overlapping before cutting out. Amonia Clouds. The track begins with a down-pitched sample of Pacific State by 808 State. A plucked bass sound comes in and adds rhythm to the track. A drum beat comes in to replace the bass. The bass then comes back, playing an almost random pattern. There's then a section where the sample becomes heavily sidechained to reinforce the oddness of this track. Everything begins to reverberate before cutting to a new synth beat section. The final section of this song samples another Blink Banshee track, Chlorophyll, which samples the final boss defeated track from The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Venus Death Trap. The track begins with an almost random guitar melody with a trap beat to back it. Everything cuts out and leaves just the drums and a vocal before coming back to the guitar loop. This track is pretty repetitive, but the repetitiveness is hard to recognize as everything just sounds so random. The track repeats itself for the second section before leaving just the vocals and the drum beat. Hyper Object. This track begins with the same drum loop from the previous track, but with a new lead melody. Reverberated vocal chops come in and fill the space, along with a plucked bass sound. This track has a great groove created by the combination of the bass and drum sounds. Everything cuts out and leaves just a down-pitched vocal chop. Drums slowly come in before a trap drum loop comes in. A neuro bass slowly comes into the background, creating a more aggressive-sounding loop. Just when you think there might be a drop, the track ends, perfectly transitioning into Photosynthesis. The track begins with lush synth chords in a vocal chop section. The vocals come from a Shinjuku Mad track, which if you remember is Blink Banshee's previous band. Everything drops out, leaving us with a guitar loop. We are brought back into the ethereal vocal chop section. The track goes back and forth between these sections for some time before bringing us into a neuro bass sound. This, along with the changing drum pattern, make the song sound faster than it is, with a slight drum and bass or drum set feel. The song ends with just the lush pads playing. Deep Space. This track begins with a trap-sounding hi-hat loop, joined by a low bass sound. This continues for some time before a small synth bloop sound comes in. This track deviates from the previous in genre and is much more of a vapor trap song than others. The song repeats this pattern for the whole 2-minute duration. Dreamcast. This song begins with a harsh bass noise and vocal sample. The sample comes from a Shinjuku Mad track, Resistor. The drum pattern and bass sound give the track a broken feel. The vocal sample gets chopped up in a dark way. More elements are added in, and the track begins to sound crowded. More vocal chops come in, becoming more and more glitchy as the track goes on. Cyber Zodiac. The track begins with lush pads and a trap drum loop. A high-pitched vocal chop comes in to create more melody. The vocal chop continues, and the track brings in more elements to make it sound more filled. This track is pretty repetitive like the last, but that's pretty common among vaporwave tracks. The track ends with an atmospheric sample section. Teen Pregnancy. The track begins with a trap drum loop and a reverberated synth melody. This track samples the intro from Boards of Canada's Sunshine Recorder. Another sample is then introduced, this time from The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. Yet another sample is introduced. This one is from an episode of Degrassi Junior High, where a character, Spike, is discussing her teen pregnancy with another character.
I'm just a kid.
The song uses this sample to create a story for this track about teen pregnancy.
Just a little mistake.
The song's upbeat melody and dark message clash, and after hearing this sample, the tone of the track changes from a danceable hit to a thought-provoking song. The song repeats the previous section a few times. The final section of the song uses elements from every section to create a new medley. Purity Boys. This track samples both the song I Just Wasn't Made for These Times by the Beach Boys and Obadiah by Purity Ring. The track's title comes from a combination of both these artists' names. The track uses the Beach Boy vocals and repitches them to make it sound more ethereal and dark. Blink Banshee switches between pitches to create an uneasy feeling. The ethereal sounding pad in the back, mixed with the vocal, put the listener into a trance. Blink Banshee uses these samples for the entirety of the song. Visualization. The track begins with a pitched down sample of the track Jellyfish Sea from the Chrono Cross OST. Along with the vocals, Blink Banshee creates an atmospheric and meditative track. The constant pitch warping of samples makes the track sound like it's constantly shifting.
When you're ready, open your eyes.
World Vision. The track begins with a sample of Bjork's Cosmogony and is used to create an atmospheric feeling with its repetition and reverberation. The minimalistic drum pattern matched with the vocals create a very spacey feel. A trap drum beat comes in to the back of the vocals, giving it slightly more energy. This track basically repeats the vocal sample, while changing the drum pattern slightly to give the track more definition. The outro section consists of just basic drums. B-Disc Shutdown/Depression. This track repurposes the melody from the Sedge Tree theme of the video game Shenmue Chapter 1. This track is entirely focused around a singular synth playing this melody, then fades out. And with that, the album is over. Blink Banshee's Blink Banshee 0 is often attributed to creating a shift in the direction of the vaporwave genre, with many calling it more approachable than other vaporwave subgenres. It has been called a definitive document of the vaporwave era and helped create the genre of vapor trap. Often the subgenres of vaporwave contain very hard to grasp musical concepts that may confuse or anger surface-level music fans, but Blink Banshee has created tracks that can serve as an introduction to the vaporwave genre, as he uses the popular genre of trap as the backbone to many of his tracks. Songs like Wavestep, Venus Death Trap, Cyber Zodiac, Teen Pregnancy, and World Vision use contemporary pop elements to create a more approachable vaporwave sounding track, while songs like Hyper Object and Purity Boys serve as a deeper dive into the vaporwave genre. I think that if this album was released today, there aren't many songs that would stand up as far as production goes. The album was necessary in the evolution of vaporwave and its many subgenres, but remains a relic of the past. I think that only Wavestep, Hyper Object, and Dreamcast would be able to stand up in today's music environment, as the rest feel dated in terms of production and sample usage. In closing, Blink Banshee's Blink Banshee 0 served as an important milestone in vaporwave history, but unfortunately remains a relic of the past. And that's it.